Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Almost said February there. Today we're going to be talking about this new report from Fox News that comes directly from CPAC, directly from Senator Rick Scott, the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. If you're not familiar with the NRSC, essentially it's just the same type of campaign that we saw for the Democrats and the Republicans in the 2020 election, but it's focused specifically on the Senate. So whenever you donate money to them, and when you are able to give support to the Democratic version of this or the Republican version, which I'm showing you right now, they focus all of their money on competitive races, and they elect these chairmen to presumably, I think, 2-year terms. Sometimes they can be chosen again as the chairman, but the NRSC pretty much just leads the Republicans into victory and sometimes defeat in the United States Senate. And it looks as if they're doing everything they can in order to win back control of the Senate. You know, they are making sure that they can do everything. They are selling merchandise. They are making, all of these things that you would normally expect from a traditional type of campaign. You know, the texting, the emailing, the volunteering, I'm sure is going to show up soon. So Rick Scott, with this sort of announcement, it's not really something that I think he expected to gain much traction, but when asked the question about whether or not the GOP will flip seats in the Senate in 2022, he immediately said they will flip at least 4 seats. And we'll talk about which 4 states the Republican Party thinks they will win at a default. And I think that, while this may be something that can be viewed as overconfidence, I also think it's just Rick Scott sort of outlining exactly where the GOP is going to be targeting entering in. So looking at what his exact comments were, he said that I think we've got opportunities, we referring to the Republican Party, across the country. Clearly, we're going to pick up Georgia. We're going to pick up Arizona. We're going to pick up New Hampshire. We're going to pick up Nevada. So there you have it. I mean, there we have the 4 states that he says, and he mentions that there are 14 Democratic seats up, and I think we can get quite a few of them. And, let's actually take a look at these 4 seats on the map because it's very interesting. This is assuming, he is assuming that the Democratic Party is able to retain every single one of their races besides the 4 mentioned. That's assuming, straight off the bat. He's saying at least because he knows that the GOP will, at least in his mind, win the remainder. And, I don't think that's true. I don't think the GOP is automatically going to start out with this super large advantage over the Democratic Party entering into the Senate elections. What they are promising is a pickup in Nevada, a pickup in Arizona, a pickup in Georgia, and a pickup in New Hampshire. We know where the GOP is going to target. And, I actually made a video back in mid-February. You can find it at the top right corner of the screen where I was talking about the NRSC's newly released campaign ads. They actually started targeting a number of Democrats around the country. 2 more Democrats than what we're expecting to see on this 4 pickup map. And, these 2 Democrats came from states that may have previously had Republican senators or have been swing states for quite some time, but that are no longer swing states following the 2020 election or following the 2016 Senate elections. Now, the first one that I'm sure you're surprised to see maybe as a safe blue state is the state of Colorado. You may be surprised to see that it's no longer on the Republican Party's radar. Well, the NRSC is still funding money into there, but they know realistically they aren't going to get it. That's why it's very clear that Rick Scott thinks New Hampshire and Nevada are more winnable than Colorado, even though, in previous elections they had voted differently. But looking at the 2020 election results in Colorado, I don't think the GOP has too much faith. Joe Biden won the election in Colorado by double digits. He won by 13.5%, a larger margin than Trump won in South Carolina and Alaska. Think about that. Colorado was bluer, then South Carolina and Alaska were red. And that's very interesting. It really goes to show that Joe Biden and the Democrats have certainly locked down the state. On the same ballot that Joe Biden won by 13.5, they also flipped a Senate race here. Cory Gardner, the one-term Republican senator who was elected back in 2014, was defeated by John Hickenlooper. Not by double digits, but still defeated. Defeated by 9.3%. So looking at the presidential results, looking at the Senate results, I honestly do not think the GOP has much faith in their ability to win there in the future, which is why it's not on the pickup radar. It's going to be there because it's historically a competitive state, but they know it might have gotten too far to the left in order for it to go to a Republican. They can make it narrower the same way Democrats did in Indiana, Missouri, North Dakota in 2018, but they probably still won't come through. And the final state that was mentioned previously, at least, where the NRSC used money, wasted money is a better term for it, is the state of Illinois. And I know what you're thinking, why Illinois? It's always safe blue. Looking at the election results in 2020, Joe Biden won it by nearly, 17 percentage points. It was very solid for the Democratic Party. But, looking at the results here, one would have to ask, was it historically Republican? Did it have a Republican incumbent in the past? It did. And, while we may be looking at the Democrats win here by 17 in 2020, they won by actually a similar amount in 2016. And, then you have to ask, when was this Republican incumbent in office? Well, 2016 was actually the last year Illinois had a Republican senator. Tammy Duckworth, I'm sure you recognize her name. She was actually floated as a potential VP nomination spot for Joe Biden, but she defeated Charlie Kirk. Looking at the results here, Charlie Kirk, oh geez, I don't know why I said that. Sorry about that. Mark Kirk, I don't know why. I guess I was thinking CPAC, but Mark Kirk here. He was the incumbent Republican. Now, he was elected in what some would argue is just a fluke election. 2010, we're talking about a red wave year. The Republicans pick up, 63 seats in the United States House of Representatives. So the Senate election certainly went to the Democratic Party. They still retained the majority, but they lost a number of seats, 6 to be exact, Illinois being one of them. And, he didn't win by a lot either. He won by just 2 percentage points, I think 1.6 to be exact. So he wasn't on track to be reelected. But the NRSC thinks because this race was held by a Republican as recently as 2016, that maybe Tammy Duckworth is an opponent worth fighting against. But realistically, we know how Illinois and how Colorado are going to go. But this leaves us with 4 pickups. These are presumably going to be picked up by the GOP. He says Georgia to begin with, then goes to Arizona, which are more believable than Nevada and New Hampshire. But it really boils down to who they decide to run. I'm sure you could see my video yesterday if you watched it. You can also check that out at the top right corner of the screen. But I talked about how Andy Biggs in Arizona is considering a run. And also in another video previously, I talked about how Kelly Loeffler was considering a run in the state of Georgia. And how both of these candidates would ultimately bring down the party. Because center candidates win in these states. It's no longer far-right states. It's no longer solid Republican states. That's not how it works. And that's not how Arizona's been for the past 4 years. You need to be a centrist or a moderate in order to do well here, at least in terms of competitive elections. If it's not a wave year, you're probably not going to see someone who's, ideology-wise comparable to Kelly Loeffler or Andy Biggs. And, looking at the field of candidates in Arizona, there could be some. But since the governor there is a very popular governor at that who could win, probably won't now. Looking at Georgia, Brian Kemp could have potentially ran for the Senate race. Doug Collins might have. Kelly Loeffler looks like she's going to do. But overall, it's too polarizing there, especially amongst the GOP. So much infighting, a civil war that Rick Scott actually mentions, here. If you're looking at the first paragraph, they said that Rick Scott predicted on Friday that the Republican Party will flip blue Senate seats to red in at least 4 states in the 2022 midterms, after earlier this week declaring that the civil war within the GOP is canceled. Well, that simply is not true. Because if you're looking at the statewide parties, they are very conflicting. Presumably, strong candidates are no longer as strong as they used to be. Some of them are hated by their statewide GOP. Doug Ducey, who should have been a shoo-in for the 2022 Senate bid, was vilified by President Trump and consequently censured by the Arizona GOP. He doesn't look like he's going to have a super easy pathway to the primary, and after being attacked by Trump, he announced he was not going to run for Senate, and everyone expected him to do so. It was his last term. He couldn't run for governor again, but looks like his attention is diverting away from Arizona. But looking at, or not Arizona, from the Arizona Senate race, but looking at Nevada and New Hampshire, why does the GOP think that they can be competitive here? Well, looking at the 2020 election results, one might argue against New Hampshire, but certainly in favor of Nevada. But Nevada's interesting. Historically speaking, the Democratic Party typically wins by narrow amounts. We're talking single digits almost every single time. And, even in Senate races, even in red wave years, even in blue wave years. Ultimately, it's a close state. And looking at the results in 2020, you have to compare that to the 2016 Senate election results, when Catherine Cortez Masto replaced Harry Reid, the Democratic Party leader, and won here by 2.4%. Well, this was 2016. On the 2020 ballot, Joe Biden also won by 2.4%. On the Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump ballot, she also won by 2.4%. And I think that it's really a testament that the state may be, Democratic, but they don't win by a lot. Which means that a red wave, or what they're trying to argue as a red tsunami, if we're talking 54 to 46 as the end result, maybe Nevada could flip. And, based off the competitive nature in 2020, maybe it could. But they would need the right candidate. And honestly, the Nevada Republican Party has almost always been overestimated in terms of the amount of support that they have. So if they're only up 1-2 points on election day, I honestly wouldn't be super confident going into that night, watching the election results pour in. But in New Hampshire, Looking at the election results here, people are targeting it because, it's still a competitive state. Historically speaking, it has gone to the Democratic Party in most elections in the 21st century. Last went to the Republicans in 2000. But looking at the election results in 2020, it actually got way more Democratic than it was in 2016. If you look at the shift from 2016, you will notice that every single county in New Hampshire shifted to the left. Every single one. It's actually a very general trend amongst the Northeast and New England region of the United States. But Joe Biden was able to win by over 7 points in this state. But looking back, Hillary Clinton did not win by nearly as large of an amount. That's why the entire state shifted to the left. In fact, Hillary Clinton won it by just 0.3%, according to the New York Times. I've seen other estimations that say 0.2%. Ultimately, she won by less than 3,000 votes, with 700,000 votes cast in total. Hillary Clinton won by just 3,000 votes. It wasn't by a lot. And then looking at the Senate election results, it was even closer. Looking at Maggie Hassan, she defeated Kelly Ayotte, which actually I think is a testament to Maggie Hassan as a candidate, because Kelly Ayotte last won her election with over 60% of the vote, but she won by just 1,000 votes. 1,017 votes to be exact. 48% to 47.9. And I'm sure if they went beyond the 10th place in terms of decimals, it would go beyond that. So it was a very close race. Ultimately came down to just 1,000 votes, and the Democrats picked it up in 2020. But looking ahead to 2022, we are seeing Chris Sununu potentially run for New Hampshire Senate. If he runs, the Republicans are going to have a much easier way of winning New Hampshire than they did previously. Kelly Ayotte is looking to make a return. I don't think she would win, but if she does ride a red wave or red tsunami, maybe she could. The state isn't exactly this solid Democratic state, even though it may have two Democrats here in terms of the House representation, in terms of the control of the two senators there, the way that it's voted on the presidential level, but it also likes liberal Republicans. This means what would be a Senator Chris Sununu, comparable to maybe Susan Collins in terms of popularity. He's very much approved of. Susan Collins is actually no longer approved of in Maine by a large amount, or even approved of at all. But, they still eat these candidates up. They love them. And that's exactly why there's a Republican governor in Vermont, in New Hampshire, and why you would see, and also Massachusetts, and why you would see a Republican do well, possibly in Connecticut or Rhode Island. There's a reason why those races are competitive. Or in Maine. But looking at New Hampshire, unless it's Chris Sununu, I really don't think that it's an automatic pickup. I also don't think it's an automatic pickup if Chris Sununu decides to run. But Rick Scott is being very bold. He's being very honest in the states that he's going to target. Because realistically speaking, these should be the only 4 pickups for the GOP if we're talking about a pickup at all. Realistically speaking, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, New Hampshire are the only ones that currently have Democratic incumbents that will likely be competitive in 2022. Unless we see Tammy Duckworth no longer run in Illinois and a very corrupt politician in Illinois decides to run, because honestly, there's a lot of them in terms of those who have gone to jail and also just been in office and exposed for certain things. Also Colorado. I think it would take a lot of shape-shifting of the entire electorate there if we're talking about a Republican victory. Even in a red tsunami year, I don't think Colorado would be super easy to flip. If anything, I think it would still remain in the Democratic column. Some of these states have become too partisan that the Democrats still can't win it. The same way Indiana was in 2018, the same way Missouri was in 2018, and the same way North Dakota was in 2018. And for someone who didn't win by a super solid margin, Rick Scott certainly looks as if, he's entering into 2022 with this super large scope on the American public, with this large understanding and, formidable base. That's not true. Rick Scott didn't win by a lot in his first election. He won by 0.2%. He's also completely endorsing and backing Trump-like candidates that were able to lose in 2020. Donald Trump didn't win, and it looks as if Rick Scott and the GOP, specifically the NRSC, are adapting Trump-like candidates to possibly even primary incumbent senators and representatives. And, looking at the future, not only 2022, 2024, but moving on beyond that, Donald Trump will still likely have a position within the Republican Party. Probably not an elected one, but still a prominent figure type status where he's able to completely move the party in one direction or another. And I think that senators like Rick Scott are going to completely take that and run with it. And I think that's what we're going to see enter into 2022. And as much as Rick Scott loves to say that, we will see 4 pickups for the Republican Party in 2022, that's a bold statement. With the candidates that I'm seeing announce or form exploratory bids or look into running, they aren't strong ones. I have yet to see a strong candidate announce their candidacy besides Chris Sununu that, or beyond announce, even consider the race. Looking at the expressed interest and the potential list in Georgia, I don't think it's going to go away from Raphael Warnock. Same thing with Mark Kelly in Arizona. Nevada could be a different story. New Hampshire certainly would be with Chris Sununu. But other than that, it's going to take a very good candidate to defeat Raphael Warnock. Someone who defied all expectations, who was viewed as a sacrificial lamb from day one. For Mark Kelly, someone who defeated an incumbent Republican. Sure, she was appointed, but someone who had won in Arizona before. And while I do think she was a weak candidate, I also think he was very strong. He was one of the few Democrats to outperform Biden in the Senate elections down ballot. In Nevada, I think Catherine Cortez Masto could absolutely hold her own. The GOP needs a very strong candidate, and if they go down the route of Donald Trump, they're going to lose the state the same way they did in 2020. So they're on a very tricky pathway here. Do they go with Donald Trump, and do they go with this strong primary support that they're undoubtedly going to get? Or do they sort of push this more moderate, more Romney and McCain-esque type of feel onto some of these Republicans? That's the decision that's going to be made. But given Rick Scott's, recent comments, I honestly do think that he's going to end up pushing the NRSC to back these types of candidates. And the NRSC has an impact beyond the general election, going into the primaries and the candidate selection process, fielding people to run. The NRSC is doing everything they can to try to win back control of the United States Senate, but they are at a crossroads here. And, while as much as they would like to say these 4 pickups are promised, they're absolute, we're going to get them, they have a lot of work to do. This will not be attained easily. But if we're talking about pickups alone, these are probably the only states that I could imagine the GOP picking up in 2022. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 Senate election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you all later today.